We all know what it is to have an appetite for something. We all know what it is to kind of feel hunger. If I talk with you guys about like chicken parm, or as the Italians in our church said, the chicken parmigiana, you guys, there's like a hunger, this image, like, oh, this cheese, this sauce, this meat, it sounds so good, Or Chick-fil-A, of course, God's anointed place, marriage supper of the Lamb, like we're going for it. You can like get hungry. There's an appetite that's kind of growing in you as I'm talking about this stuff. And I think about hunger for God like that we would be so hungry for God. Now here's the deal. Some of you guys watching have tremendous hunger for God. Like you're like, Doug, I'm in, I'm so ready for this. All I want to do is get closer to God. Some of us are saying, man, I would love to be close to God, but I don't really have that hunger. It's like I wish I had that hunger. I want to inspire you today. And if you're here watching and you're like, I could care less. I'll watch this because I got nothing else to do right now, but I'm really not hungry for God. I pray that maybe by the end of this, our little time together here, you'll change your mind about that. If you're not a follower of Jesus, maybe you're saying, I didn't even know I could be close to God, You're talking about this hunger to be nearer to God. It's almost, Doug, like you're talking about like you know Him and you spend time with Him. And what's that all about? The truth is, we miss out on so much when we miss out on closeness with God. So we're going to look at Psalm 84 a little bit today. We're going to skip around a little bit through the verses. We don't know who wrote Psalm 84, but the psalmist says some beautiful things about being close to God. He basically goes back and forth between two thoughts. I want to be close to God, and here's why. How lovely is your dwelling place, Lord Almighty. So he's just saying, God, your place where you are is lovely. Now here's the deal. Back when the psalmist would have written this, God's presence wasn't everywhere. Like if you have a relationship with God, His presence is in you. You go to work, you go to school, you stay home like you are right now, then God's presence is with you. But back in the day, the presence of God was really only, except for exceptions, in the temple courtyard. And God would reveal Himself in special ways. And so the psalmist here is saying, man, I just want to go be at church. I just want to go to the temple where God's presence is. Now here's what's incredible. Though they have shut down the church building, they can't shut down the presence of God here and now, right? And so you and I can get close to God on our couch or on a walk around our neighborhood. The writer here is saying, I just love your presence. Your presence is lovely, God. That's why I want to be close to you. And it goes on. He says, my soul yearns, even faints for the courts of the Lord. Now, I think some of our souls are kind of fainting for church, fainting for the community, for the gathering. And maybe we'll appreciate it a little bit more when everything gets back to normal and we can gather there. But how spoiled we are to be able to experience the presence of God wherever we go. Verse 2, it says, my heart and my flesh cry out for the living God. What passion there is. My heart and my flesh are literally like crying out for the living God. Now think about that phrase, living God. That's who we're talking about getting close to here. Think about it, Netflix and our job and our stuff and our friends at school that we might miss right now and all the different, social media likes and all that stuff that matters so much to us. God's sitting there going, hey, I'm like the living God. Like you're living for all this other stuff, but A, I'm alive, and B, I'm God, and I want to hang out with you. I want to spend time with you. I want to be close to you. I want you to long for my presence. Goes on in verse 5. Blessed are those whose strength is in you. Why should I care about being close to God and be hungry and have an appetite for being near God? Because this verse just told us that He is our strength. If you were in church a few months ago, you may remember that I had a huge set of weights, over 300 pounds up on the stage with me. And I know you all think I'm crazy jacked, but I invited someone much bigger than me. I can hear you laughing through the camera, by the way. But I invited someone much bigger than me, one of our bass players, Dave Jockefe, who's lifted almost 600 pounds in a deadlift. And I said, hey man, I'm inviting you into my weakness here. Would you be my strength right now? Some of us need to invite God into our weakness and say, God, be my strength. Let's finish out the verse. Blessed are those whose strength is in you, whose hearts are set on pilgrimage. What does this mean? It meant that the people, to get to the temple, right, near God's presence, back in the psalmist's day, would have to go on a pilgrimage or a journey. If you're not a follower of Jesus, the best thing I could tell you is go on a pilgrimage. What do I mean by that? Go on a little bit of a journey. Seek God out. You don't have to actually go physically somewhere, but just begin to pray. God, if you're there, show me. God, if you're real, open up my eyes to who you are. Verse 6 says this. This is powerful, and this, I pray, will speak to some of you who are really going through some pain because of what we're going through right now. Verse 6, as they passed through the valley of Baca, they make it a place of springs. The autumn rains also cover it with pools. Baca means balsam trees, and the valley of balsam trees was known to be a dry place, a place of weeping and mourning. As some of us are there right now, it feels like we are on this journey through the valley of Baca and we're stuck in a place of weeping or mourning. But I love that the verse here, verse 6 says that they make it, the people on this journey in that valley make it a place of springs. How do they do that? They think about God's presence. They think about how great it will be to be in God's presence. And also, some really smart theologians think that the autumn rains that say it covers it with pools, like this dry place suddenly becomes a place of rain and pools, is God's refreshing in the midst of our pain. Guys, some of you guys are in the valley of Baca. I know people who have lost their jobs because of this virus situation. I know people who postponed their wedding. I know people who are going through some deep trouble because of this virus. Or maybe you're like, man, life was already tough before it, man. The virus is just a nice distraction from the pain I was already feeling in my life to start with. And I want to encourage you, if that's you, man, get excited for God's presence. Let Him refresh you. Let Him bring pools into that valley you might find yourself in right now. Let's drop down to verse 10. Better is one day in your courts than 1,000 elsewhere. Think about that. Like, the writer of this psalm, so excited about God's presence that he's saying, I'd rather be there than anywhere else. Just one day is better than 1,000 elsewhere. If you could go anywhere, where would you want to go? Some of you guys are like, I just go to like Taco Bell. I just want to get out of the house, man. I'm just tired of being home right now. No, when things get back to normal, and they will get back to normal, by the way, hang in there. But when they do, you might be thinking, oh man, I'd love to go to like, Yankee Stadium or Citi Field. Man, imagine being in the locker room with the players, or imagine going backstage with my favorite band, or meeting my favorite author or artist. Like, I just love to go there. Like, the author of this psalm is saying, I would rather spend one day in God's presence than any of those other places. And I love the hunger and the passion in the heart. And so here's what I pray you'll take with you today. There's nothing like closeness with God. And so how do we respond to this? Well, I want to encourage you guys to get hungry for that closeness with Him. Make it your goal to get nearer to Him. That's the beautiful thing about this relationship with God. If you are hungry for God today and you came, woke up this morning and came to this video hungry for God, then you can take a step closer to Him. But if you didn't, and you're kind of like, I wish I had that hunger, you could still take a step close to Him. Or if you had no passion or desire for this at all, but suddenly you're like, wow, I want to lean into this God who refreshes, this God who is a strength, this God who cares and desires a relationship with me and is a living God, then man, you could take a step toward Him as well. Maybe saying, how? How do I get there? Well, I think a couple things. First off, just ask Him. Say, God, I need a hunger for you. I don't have it. Would you make it more intense? Or God, I have a hunger for you, but make it deeper. I want to go on journey. I want to seek you out. Maybe some of us need to fast and pray and open up the Word of God a little more. But I just want to encourage you to keep on being willing to cry out to God for more hunger, and keep on being willing to push through maybe some of the dryness when you're in that valley of Baca, and let Him refresh you. John Piper talks about how sometimes we kind of start out with spending time with God as like a duty or a job, but the duty turns to delight, right? The job almost becomes a joy. This past summer, I was insulating the basement in our house, and it was a horrible job. If you ever worked with insulation, it is itchy and nasty and horrible. And I was at Home Depot stuffing my minivan with all kinds of insulation. I literally filled the whole back of the car up, and this guy walked by and he was like, man, I am so glad I'm not you. And so I kicked him. No, I didn't kick him. I just punched him. No, I didn't do that either. Well, live in fear. You'll never know. But I was really just like, dude, I don't need this right now because I don't want to be doing this. And I got home, unloaded the van, brought it all downstairs, and I was like, oh, I just don't want to do this. But I pushed through it, right? And I started lining the walls, and I'm cutting it, I'm getting into a groove, and I'm stapling it to the studs, and man, things are starting to go good. And then my wife yells down the stairs, Doug, come on, it's time for dinner. And I was like, no, I'm insulating, I'm in a groove, I'm going. Guys, if I can get there with insulation, imagine how you could get there with God. Just pushing through. Maybe some of the avoidance feelings or some of the half-heartedness that we sometimes find ourselves struggling with. And we will eventually find that our hearts are hungry for God, that we're satisfied in God, and that we find He's our strength, blessing, joy, and refreshment. And so will you search for Him, and will you cry out to Him? If you're not a follower of Jesus, call on His name. Say, Jesus, I want to know you. Just show me what it looks like to follow you. There's nothing like closeness